Well, we have a pretty good crowd here. So again, everyone welcome. Thank you for being here. Happy St. Patrick's Day. We do have Spanish interpretation this evening, and I'll turn it over to our interpreter to briefly make an announcement and explain that.
Oh, shoot.
El botón de interpretación en la parte inferior de su pantalla. For Spanish, select the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen.
Thank you everyone again for joining us here on Zoom to help Denver Parks and Recreation plan the future of Bear Creek Park. I'm Jessica Anderson, the Denver Parks Senior Resiliency Planner managing this master planning process. A few quick reminders about virtual meetings. Please keep yourself on mute during the presentation. We'll have open question and answer period later on this evening. Please go ahead and use the chat feature if you have any questions or feedback during the presentation. And again, during the question and answer period later, use the reaction feature to raise your hand before you would like to speak. So quick introductions. I'd first like to give a shout out to Councilman Flynn's office. Thank you for joining us tonight, Councilman Flynn.
Thank you. Thank you. May I say a few words here?
Please do.
Thank you. Okay, I wasn't sure where you wanted me to speak, but I just want to thank everybody for attending here, but especially I want to thank the Parks and Rec Department and your project team here, including your consultant team. This park is just so near and dear to Southwest Denver people. I moved here from the Philadelphia area 41 years ago when my kids were very little, and this park was like the center of their lives for so long. They still call it. My daughter commented on my Facebook post advertising this meeting. She said, "I love the Hat Park." People know it as the Hat Park or the Sombrero Park. And I'm so happy that that's still there. But this is a long time and a long record of service for this park. And it just needs a fresh look. What does the community need today that we didn't think of 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago? This is our time to reimagine this park and what it can be and how it can better serve the community. And I'm just really looking forward to what the community has to say to us about this. So with that, I'm going to listen. I have no preconceptions about this park, except we have to keep the sombrero slide. That would be my number one. But thank you, and happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody.
Thank you, Councilman Flynn. Noted. We'll make sure to keep the sombrero slide. So first, I'd like to introduce my associate at Denver Parks, Ian Schillinger Brokaw, and I'll allow Ian to introduce himself and the rest of our design team.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Schillinger Brokaw. As Jessica stated, I don't think she actually introduced herself fully, but she is our main project manager and resiliency planner heading up this master planning effort. And working right along Jessica and myself, we have Gretchen Wilson, Will Coleman, and Ari Solomon from Dig Studio. So they are our prime consultant who put together a lot of the slides that you're going to be seeing here today and gathered a lot of that baseline information for Bear Creek Park that we will be talking about. In addition to Dig Studio, we have Nora Newrider, Josh Eldridge, Krish Kroger, and Julian Cicernos, who occupy some specialties such as an ecology focus, an engineering focus, and then public engagement specialists as well. We also have Dean, who has been assisting with the public engagement process. So he is going to be sending out a whole bunch of correspondence to individuals. You may see emails or social media postings with his name on it as well. Next slide, please. For our agenda today, we already took care of the introduction, so we're doing great there. And then next up, we're going to move along to a project overview. So provide some reasons of the master planning effort, and then transition to our community outreach plan. So you can have an idea of the different touch points that we're going to have with your community going forward through this master planning process. Then we're going to provide a existing conditions report focusing on a multitude of different topics to have a good baseline understanding of where the park is right now. And then we want to have a good portion of this meeting open up for input and being able to understand what your community vision is. So as we're going over some of these existing conditions, please be thinking about those and identifying what some of your needs are and your desires are for this park, because there will be a large portion of this meeting dedicated specifically to that. And then to close it up right at the end, we will provide an outline of project next steps. So reiterating where some of those touch points in the community are and providing a good timeline of when we expect to have different components of this plan ready and prepared.
And Ian, I will just add that as we go through those existing conditions, we'll be asking some polling questions for everyone. And those, I don't know if you already went through that, Will. I don't think you did. We'll be asking polling questions for you to give feedback on each of those as the questions come up. Please answer those, and we will have those on the Spanish interpretation. Those will be translated for Spanish speakers as well to answer.
Excellent, thank you. So why Bear Creek Park and why now? So as Councilman Flynn alluded to, Bear Creek is one of our few large regional parks in our entire system that has never had a master plan completed, so it's long overdue. This park also falls in a medium to high equity need area within Denver Parks and Recreation's equity index. So this community needs more park amenities and more quality park space. Bear Creek is somewhat of a hidden gem. Many of you on this call probably know that. It's surrounded by quite a few barriers. So Highway 285 Hampton is a significant barrier to the park, along with Fort Logan Cemetery to the south and lack of sidewalks along Kenyon Avenue and Sheridan Boulevard to the west. So this park has some significant barriers. Through this planning process, we will ensure that we are intentional with the park improvements to best serve Southwest Denver, your neighborhoods who you represent, as well as the larger Denver community and Southwest metro area in general. So this master planning process is driven by Denver Parks and Recreation's Game Plan for a Healthy City. This is our citywide strategic plan. So very, very briefly, we have 4 guiding principles that we look to in every planning process. Every drop, which talks about preserving our natural resources. So things like Bear Creek, the creek itself, reducing irrigation water, increasing our urban forest, and protecting wildlife habitat. Every person, this refers to all of you. We want you to be able to easily access a high quality, safe, and meaningful park space. We also want your feedback on how to help us diversify park features and amenities and programming to meet the needs of your community. Every dollar is the guiding principle about equity to ensure our park spaces are equitably distributed to all communities across Denver, and to help us determine how to spend our funding to achieve the master plan goals and ensure that this park is maintained to those goals over time. And finally, uniquely Denver. I think many of you know that Bear Creek is extremely uniquely Denver experience. From the sombrero slide that everyone knows and is iconically recognized to the natural landscapes reminiscent of Denver's historic landscapes. We definitely want to ensure we maintain and preserve the features that are unique and important to your neighborhood's history and culture. Next slide, please. So Denver Parks kicked off the project in January of this year, and we hope to have the plan finalized by the end of the year or early 2023. We are currently in the data collection and existing conditions analysis phase, and this is our first public meeting. The project schedule depends on a series of public meetings, pop-up events, and community surveys, so I invite you to participate throughout the process. I'll hand it over to Nora to go over the public engagement process in more detail.
Thanks very much, Jessica. Thank you all for being here tonight. So in terms of public engagement, you're at community meeting number 1. We will have 2 more of these over the course of the project, and they'll look very much like this. Or if we have an opportunity to be together in person, we will certainly look for that as well, depending on the preferences of the stakeholders here tonight and throughout the project. There is a smaller group called the Steering Committee of community representatives who will meet 4 times over the course of the project. And that's a chance for us to vet ideas and concerns ahead of time, and also have them be ambassadors back out to their communities in terms of how this project is progressing. We will pull together small groups of folks to do interviews so that we can dig a little deeper into some of the concepts and designs and maybe concerns and issues that are coming up around the park. And we do want to encourage everybody, in addition to attending these meetings, to take part in our community surveys. So the first community survey is going live very shortly, and we'll tell you about that a little bit later. There'll be a second community survey for you to offer your input and your ideas. We also hope to be in the community interacting with folks who use the park in other ways in person, especially as we move into the spring and summer. So lots of ways for you to participate, and we encourage you to use as many of those channels as you possibly can. It's important for us to hear from you.
Okay, hi, I'm Gretchen Wilson, one of the consultants from Dig Studio. We wanted to share with you how we are starting to gather all of the existing conditions data for the study area. We are looking at the project because it is a regional park because of its size and location. We're looking at the park at various different scales, whether that's the 2-mile study area, which is what we're using for most of our information gathering, or even all the way out to the 5-mile study area. We're looking at this park through a lot of different lenses in order to gain all the information we can about its context and its importance within the city of Denver. Next slide, please. And just so you can understand the site level study area, Bear Creek Park is the blue line that you see here from Sheridan on the west, just south of 285, and north of Kenyon Avenue and Fort Logan there. We're looking also at the maintenance facility across the street somewhat, and the Bear Creek Regional Trail itself all the way from Sheridan to Lowell. Next slide. As you can see, within the 5-mile area, Bear Creek is the yellow shape in the middle of the circle. This is a very important connection for wildlife habitat corridors within the area, because it is on Bear Creek and then connects even farther along the creek corridor to the South Platte River. So we feel that that's an important aspect of the study. Next slide. We also wanted to share the data that Jessica mentioned earlier about public health and equity index scores from City of Denver and DPR. These scores to the north, what you see, the number 5, the higher score actually means a greater need. And so on the equity index, the neighborhoods, the Harvey Park South neighborhood and Harvey Park neighborhood are in need of some of these equity improvement to some of these equity indicators on the bottom right, like park access, park investment, park acres, and want to help with factors like obesity. But you can see that neighbors to the south who have that great access to Bear Creek Park have a higher equity or lower equity index, which means they are in less need. But we feel it's really important to look at this and think about this in the context of the master plan.
And if I could chime in here, Gretchen, we would also like to go on and launch our first poll. I will launch this now for you all to respond to, and we're going to keep this open for about 25 to 30 seconds. So we were just wondering, how often do you visit Bear Creek Park? 1 to 3 times per month, 1 to 2 times per week, more than 3 times per week, or never, kind of very, very infrequently. So if you all could take a second and weigh in there. We'll keep it open for about 10 more seconds. All right, we'll go on and end this in the poll, and we can share some of these results with everybody. So it looks like, around 45% of folks say that 1 to 3 times per month is how frequently they visit. 20% 1 to 2 times per week, and 10% of you said more than 3 times a week, and the remaining 25% of you say very infrequently or almost never. All right, and I'll stop sharing that. We can go on to the next slide.
So as you know, Bear Creek Park has a lot of great amenities. We have the multi-use fields, the baseball fields, playground, multiple picnic shelters and areas, the horseshoe pits, and multiple paths that are used for various uses throughout the park. So it's got a lot of great amenities, and we just want to understand the surrounding area amenities as well. It looks like we have a lot of the similar uses in those smaller parks as well, but we're going to be thinking about that as we, take that input from you guys to understand what you want to see in Bear Creek. Currently, we don't have information for 2020 because that was probably an underutilized year, but we also just didn't gather that information. But we will be gathering information for 2022 on permit use. Now, these are just activities that require a permit within the park. So this is what we know from that permit use data, but that the softball fields were heavily used, and we would likely expect those to continue to be heavily used, as well as the multi-use fields as the team sports pick up again with people getting back together post-pandemic. Picnic areas were used quite a lot, even during the 2021. But we also have a question here for polling, Will.
Yep, I'm gonna just launch the question here, and we're just asking, what amenities do you or members of your family use at Bear Creek Park typically? And our choices are the athletic field, picnic shelters, playgrounds, the splash pad adjacent to the playground. Use it as a regional trailhead, the unpaved trails to the south side of the site, the horseshoe pits, and the restrooms. And we have an option for other there too. And we would, if there's something else that you really is kind of what you typically use at the park, please select that and then post in the chat what that other use is for us. That would be great. And we'll leave this open for about another 10 or so seconds to give some people a chance to respond. And as we go through these too, please feel free to add any other questions or other comments on our chat too. This will be kind of a log that we'll keep here. So we'd love any and all input that you all can provide. All right, I'll go on and end the poll now and share the results with everyone. So yes, as you can see, it looks like around 15% of folks use the athletic field, the picnic shelters, much higher rate, about 45% of respondents. The playgrounds, about 30% of our respondents use the playground, and similar to 25% for the splash pad. Use of the regional trailhead is 55%, so that's a little bit of a higher number than I would have originally imagined. Unpaved trails, 45%, only 10% for the horseshoe pits, 30% for the restrooms, and then 25% of you guys said that there was another use. So yeah, again, please, you know, if you have those other uses, throw them in the chat. We'd love to see. Good, and I'll stop sharing that.
And I'm just helping one person out here through the chat. So on site access, we know that this is a very challenging site for some people to access, especially from the north. We know there are several entry points that people typically use to get into the park, but we wanted to get your input on how you get to the park, as well as what entry point you're using for the most part. So Will's going to open up that poll.
Yep, just launched another poll, and yeah, that would be, you know, how do you typically get to and from the park? You know, walking, biking, driving, or if there's another method of transportation you typically take to get there, whether it's public transit being another. Where do you enter the park? And that's, you know, Raleigh Street to the north. The entrance is at the underpass, as you can see up here, and I can actually point at it here on the screen. Kenyon Avenue, which is you know, kind of a less formalized parking lot along the north side of Kenyon Avenue. Along the trail, either entry point on either side, and then when we spoke with our steering committee, some folks had mentioned that they actually use the YMCA and that parking lot as an entry point. So we were interested to see if any of you all use the same access point as some of them. It was one that we hadn't considered initially, but quite a few folks said that they actually access the park there. So I'll leave it open for another few seconds to let you all finish responding. Yeah, and again, go on and throw it in the chat if there's another way that we didn't list here too, that you access the park or how you get to the park. All right, I'll go on and end the poll here in just a couple seconds. All right. Okay, and we'll share these results with you all. So it looks like, yeah, 33% of you had responded that you walk to the park. A few less, 14% of respondents said they bike. 52% of respondents said that they drive, and as of right now, no one else has any other ways they get to the park. And as far as where you enter the park, it looks like Raleigh Street to the north is our most popular entry point with 48% of respondents. The Kenyon Avenue parking lot and area, 25%. Via the trail, closer to 19% of respondents, and then at the YMCA, just a few of you, 10% of respondents saying they enter at the YMCA. So thank you all for responding.
Okay, so once you get to the site, there are a multitude of different ways to get around the site. As we mentioned before, the regional Bear Creek Trail runs right through the north side of the park. There's one bridge across for the bike trail and one bridge across Bear Creek for pedestrians. There are multiple trails that are formalized soft surface trails, you know, with crusher fines paving, but then on the south side, there are many informal soft surface trails that are kind of cutting different ways throughout the site, and just a lot of fun ways to get around the park, but also creating a little bit of wear and tear in some areas. As we know, the regional trail is heavily used by cyclists. We can see that in spring, summer, and fall. We have a lot more cyclists than we do pedestrians along the Bear Creek Trail, and these were taken from an actual trail counter that DPR installed in 2021. But we know that we have some conflict points along that trail, and we heard that from the steering committee in their first meeting as well, especially near the playground and in other areas where it's pretty tight for pedestrians to cross the bridge and then not have to get in the way of a bicycle, you know, going fairly fast along the trail. So Will, is there a polling question on this one?
There is not. We didn't have a polling question, but again, if anybody would like to share any of their experiences or how they feel about some of these trail crossings and intersections and relative safety, please please respond in the chat, and we can certainly touch on that too when we get into our discussion portion of the presentation. And I'll kind of take over from here. Again, I'm Will Coleman with Big Studio, as we kind of started to look, we kind of started with a big picture context and narrowed down into the site specific analysis. One of the approaches that we took was really to kind of separate the site into kind of three different overall or overarching use areas, and then kind of breaking those even further down into some special interest or kind of areas of interest. So as you can see here in kind of the more yellow overlay color here, we have the passive recreation zone, kind of our creek or our riparian stream corridor. And then in green here are more of our active recreation zone to the north of the park there. The creek really being that big divider kind of between the two major use zones that we identified. And then breaking those out even further, as you can see here, into kind of the recreation field zone, our playground area, and then kind of our entry drive and parking area, that does take up a fair portion of the active space in the site. And then to the south, separating kind of our two, what we consider two of the open space areas. And then more of our pond area, which we'll touch on a little bit here too when we get into more of the hydrology of the site, then our south parking area. So just to give you an example of kind of a deeper analysis here, we did take another look at the playground area. Obviously the iconic piece to this being the sombrero slide and our giant person CF thing here. And, we did feel like that this, there were a plethora of different kinds of play opportunities throughout the play space. Some different opportunities for seating areas and more passive recreation, even within kind of that active space and area. And then, clearly the restroom building, which has this wonderful little mural on it, just adjacent to the playground area and adjacent to the parking lot there too. So one of the things we wanted to, kind of our next poll question here was really, what is your favorite part of the playground? And I'll go on and launch this poll now. The sombrero slide being an option, the swings, the play towers and slides, which are fun, and there's a lot of different activities involved in those. The climbing wall itself, adjacent to the sombrero slide, or, is there another piece to this playground that you really enjoy that maybe we didn't capture and is important to you or you have fond memories of? So we'll leave this poll open here for another 10 seconds or so. And it seems like a lot of you are responding, so I'll leave it open for maybe 15 more. Let's see. All right. Okay. I'll go on and end the poll. It looks like many of you have responded and share the results here. So no surprise here, 61% of respondents said that the sombrero slide was their favorite. And I think that, that is such an iconic piece within this park. Swings, much less at 13%, but still a few of you. The tower and play slides, only 4% or one respondent enjoys those. The climbing wall, 13% too, and then a few of you chose other, and again, please get in the chat, and we'd love to hear what else you like. Great. Okay, and I'll stop sharing that. Thank you all for responding. So that's just an example of kind of how we're taking these smaller areas and really breaking them down and really analyzing what's there and looking for opportunities to improve. So one thing we also did when we started looking at the site in a little bit more detail was this idea of kind of a visual safety analysis, where we really went around and kind of noticed different, we could call them typologies of kind of visual characteristics or view sheds here. And as you can kind of see up towards the north of the park, in our more active space, there are a lot of clear, much more clear visibility up there. Whereas when you get across, to the south side of the site, across the creek, you do come across some areas where, maybe there's some hiding potential. While we don't have tons and tons of tree canopy cover, the understory plant material and kind of ecology of the area is such that, it does seem like there are some hiding places that are created, and we felt like there are some opportunities for improvement there, and maybe some areas that would make people feel a little bit less than safe. So I'm going to go on and launch another poll question for you all, and that is, in relation to the south side and the kind of the open space area of the park, do you all visit that side of the park very often, and if why or why not? So this is really just a yes or no use poll. But I would love for you all to kind of chime in on the chat with why or why not, as far as kind of visiting that south side of the area. I think in our last meeting with our steering committee, there were a lot of folks who loved the area, while at the same time felt a little less than safe in some parts of the south side of the site. So we're just really interested to see how you all feel about it. And I'll leave this poll open here for another 5 to 10 seconds. Looks like some of you are still responding. All right, we'll go on and, a few more. We'll go on and end the poll now here and share the results. So we are completely split on this poll. It's exactly 50-50 for yes and no as far as using the south side of the site. So yeah, we'd love to hear some of what you all have to say as far as why. We're very interested in knowing it's really a beautiful area down there. All right.
We had a question in the chat about, Jessica, were you going to answer that one?
I was just going to say the same thing, Gretchen. If you want to read the chat, we can address.
Has safety concerns been expressed about the current state of the park that we felt the need to conduct a safety analysis? Yes, and I think it's the current state of all of, Denver. We do have camping happening in the park, groups gathering and participating in activities that are probably not preferred activities within a public park. And I think, when we visited the site, it did come up that, I didn't feel safe visiting. But also, I think we heard from one member of our steering committee that, she used to bike through the park, and currently she doesn't feel safe biking through the park. So yes, and I think it is a difficult a balance between how we plan this side of the park, because it is a beautiful natural area and everyone loves it. And so we just want to hear your thoughts on how you feel in the area and if you visit that side of the park.
And I actually think that's a really good segue, Gretchen, into kind of our next slide here, which is really starting to talk about the ecology and the environmental quality of the site. So as you can see here, this is kind of shows areas of tree canopy cover. But if for anyone who's kind of been to the south of the site, and really, well, this is such a large site, it may not look like we have some areas that are more sparse, but we do have a lot of understory and kind of shrub growth and other plant material that's not necessarily categorized as trees that I think fills in and makes this map or this diagram just a little bit misleading maybe in that side of the park, because it is fairly dense vegetation if you've been down there and noticed and kind of walked around. But our environmental and our ecological consultant on this project has pulled together this map, which I think really speaks well to the park and kind of reinforces a little bit about what we were kind of saying with the use zones and how those are separated here. So as you can see, a vast majority of the south side on the south side of Bear Creek within our park area is categorized as upland herbaceous. Now, granted, as you can see with kind of the striping in there, it is a non-native herbaceous area. So it, while it's wild and natural, it's not necessarily, native plant material in a large portion of that. The purple areas in here, as you can see, are riparian forested areas, largely adjacent to the creek itself, and in some lower lying areas, kind of within the natural space to the south side. And then our bluegrass forested and bluegrass lawn areas, as you can tell, very much within the active space of the park to the north. And kind of getting these typologies together and kind of categorizing it in this way helps us to do a few things. And one of those is really look at the, the function and kind of the quality of the ecology and the environment with respect to kind of these use typologies, right? So as you can see here, I mean, even though a lot of this on the south side is non-native herbaceous plant material, it is good rated or rated as good for, kind of its functionality and its actual ecological quality. And then our darker areas here are actually, coming through rating excellent, as far as the production. And you can see we do have a small area of kind of fair quality within here, but I mean, the vast majority of the site is really, kind of in that good or excellent range. And that's, I think, really interesting to see, even considering the non-native quality of some of it to the south. And as we talk about kind of environmental health and quality, I think, we have to, you can't ignore the biggest, biggest organizing feature in the park, which is Bear Creek itself, and kind of the greater hydrological context of kind of where a lot of this water is coming from. As you can kind of see up here, it's an urban stream, so it's primarily fed by runoff that's through a lot of these homes and more urban areas, kind of to the west and to the north. And then as well as being fed by Marston Reservoir, kind of through this series of really detention ponds and smaller bodies of water coming through the country club and through the cemetery, and then really flowing into these four some more stormwater features. They're not technically water quality ponds, but they're some stormwater features that were implemented, I think, in the early 2000s, if I'm not correct, or if I'm correct. But and I guess as far as this being a very urban stream here, there has been some sampling and some water quality testing that's been conducted on the site along Bear Creek in a few different locations, but two in particular within our park site here. And while the overall water quality was assessed as a good rating or a good level, there are some, still some issues. E. coli levels in these testing areas were fairly high. And it really seemed to be stemming from Sheridan Boulevard, kind of having the largest impact on water quality when it comes to Bear Creek. So, clearly with Sheridan being right here, so close to our site, these kind of testing locations were a little bit higher in those levels to, I guess, exceeding the typical Colorado standard for water quality. So something I think that as we kind of get in and plan, we need to really be considerate of planning uses or use areas and activating the creek, just something to be cognizant of. And as we think about enhancing water quality through improvements within this park for Bear Creek. And then I think as far as hydrology goes, another really big piece to this is looking at how the creek itself impacts the developable area in the park, and kind of limits or gives us opportunities as far as kind of what sort of things we can propose for the future in this area. So as you can see, I mean, a vast majority of the activated space to the north is actually within the 100-year floodplain, which has implications, as far as limitations on structures, limitations on certain things that you can do within the floodplain areas. So knowing this is going to be really helpful as we, find opportunities, I think, and identify constraints moving forward with, with proposing kind of what can happen in the future here. So as you can see, these are just some site photos. These top three being Bear Creek itself at some different points within the park. So as you can see, I mean, Bear Creek is really a beautiful stream. And there's a lot of opportunity, we think, along site, to engage with the stream already, and potentially, bringing people to water is always wonderful, especially when we have something beautiful like this. So looking at some of the existing qualities there, as well as the detention ponds that I mentioned before, kind of that series of four, looking at those, the quality of those and how that kind of fits within the park space and the character. And as you can kind of see here, a lot of those are pretty filled with algae at this point. And, while they have some really unique design elements, from when they were implemented back in the early 2000s, some certain features are in less than great condition. And, there's, I think, a great opportunity there to really enhance those moving forward. And it's something we feel that can be taken advantage of kind of in the future. And actually, I have another poll for us here. As long as my poll didn't disappear. Here we are. Okay, so we just wanted to ask you all, do you recreate in or near Bear Creek itself, along the banks in the riparian corridor? Do you swim in the swimming hole that's in Bear Creek currently? We just want to see how you use it. So we'll keep this open for a little bit, and since it's just a yes/no question, please all thoughts in the chat. We'd love to hear how you all are using it. And I'll leave it open here for another 5 or 6 seconds. All right.
Swimming. Huh.
All right, I'll end the poll here and share our results. So looks like a fairly close split. About 44% of you say that yes, you do recreate in or near Bear Creek, and 56% of you saying no. So I will stop sharing that, and as I said, please give us your what you do in there or why you stay away from it in the chat. That would be
Will,
great.
if I could jump in at this point,
Yeah,
Councilman Flynn also posted this in the chat that since the E. coli levels are generally very high, Denver Parks and Rec does not encourage people to use the stream or wade into the stream, but we know people do it anyway.
Sure thing. Thank you, Councilman Flynn. Okay, so that really kind of wraps up at least the big talking points we wanted to hit as far as kind of our existing conditions and initial findings and analysis. And we really wanted to open this up to for discussion with you all and see have everybody kind of weigh in here. So we did go on and wanted to kind of start off with a question for thought and responses, and that is what new or different park amenities and play features would you enjoy seeing in Bear Creek Park?
Well, this one is a chat option, Will, not the next one is an open discussion. Is that correct?
Sure. Yeah, I think we could do it. Yeah, if that works. If you all wanted to kind of just do what we were doing with some of the yes/no questions and provide some thoughts and ideas in the chat, that would be great, and we can maybe take a look at those and see what you all think.
There's a lot of discussion in the chat about disc golf. I've seen probably a dozen comments.
In terms of what people would like to see more of, park ranger has come up, disc golf as well.
I saw someone post earlier in the chat wanting more art murals and making sure we touch up the existing art murals.
There was also one person mentioned.
Dean, somehow you went mute for that end of that one.
Oh, I was just mentioning, I saw also somebody asked about whether a pickleball court could be added.
Mm-hmm.
There are comments about updated lighting would be.
Now, for those of you who commented about updated lighting, where do you see the deficiencies? I guess is that around the parking lot area? Is it other areas that concern you, or just curious?
Under the bridge and around the playground.
Now, under the bridge, as in along the regional trail there, where we.
You mean coming through the Raleigh Street entrance? Okay.
Gotcha. Yep.
Oh, and Sheridan, okay.
One of the questions that at sort of earlier in the chat, I might put this to the panelists is what are the opportunities for creating more active uses and reducing sort of the passive portion of the park? That was one of the questions in the chat.
So I think that is open to discussion. I think there is, you know, opportunity to balance the park. If the community felt that there was a need for those uses, as well as a need for some activation. But I think that's got to come out of this process. So Jessica, do you have anything else to add to that?
So right now in the process, we want to consider all of your input and your ideas, and we will work through the process of balancing that, leaving some of this natural open space and activating more uses. So right now we're considering everything. Everything's kind of on the table. I see someone in the chat mentioned a dog park. That's something we've talked with Councilman Flynn's office about as well. So we will review the dog park criteria related to this park to understand if that's a feasible option. Someone else in the park, or someone else in the chat also mentioned a bike course like Ruby Hill.
Another suggestion in the chat was sort of exercise opportunities near the trail. Are there opportunities for putting in exercise opportunities near the trail so that people can be in nature, but also get their calisthenics and exercise in? There was a question in the chat too about ranger presence in the park, and if that is something that's being reviewed for.
We do currently have a team of rangers in the Southwest District that patrol Bear Creek Park as part of their route. I don't currently know how much time they spend there. That's something that's on my list to investigate going forward, to understand how much this park is patrolled, how they patrol it, and how we can improve that patrol over time.
There were a number of questions about E. coli in the waterway. How does it get there? How are park users warned of E. coli? It appears that there are some warnings, but we might point out where those are.
I think Sensory, who works with Jessica and Ian at Parks, pointed out that there is one sign at the picnic pavilion. I'm guessing that would be in this area here.
Yes, where you circled. There's a sign there, but we can work with the Department of Public Health and Environment to add some additional signage. E. coli is naturally occurring in a lot of urban waterways. It is something that the city, specifically Department of Public Health and Environment, monitors. And Parks and Dottie, our Department of Transportation Infrastructure wastewater team, work closely to try to improve water quality throughout the watershed. And so it's something we're aware of and continuing to improve throughout Bear Creek.
And to piggyback on that a little bit, as far as, not necessarily where it's coming from exactly, but in the DDPHE studies where kind of these two sample locations came from, there was another sample location just upstream on the other side of Sheridan, a little further up, and that one actually, the E. coli levels came in below the acceptable minimum. So, not to say that Sheridan Boulevard was the main cause, but that was a large identified piece to or impact factor to the water quality levels kind of within Bear Creek Park. And so, I guess make of that what you will, but that was kind of with their assessment.
You touched on this a little bit, but there is a question from Mark about some of these more active uses being still compatible with wildlife and the natural landscape? Is attention being paid to the fact that you're trying to mesh these active uses and these natural uses to create a balance? And are there active uses that are simply incompatible with the natural space?
Well, Jessica, do you want to answer that one, or do you want me to?
Sure, I can attempt to address that. And I think that the short answer is yes, there are some uses that are incompatible with more natural landscape or specifically wildlife habitat that we may want to preserve. So we really do need to balance some of these different uses and understand the impacts as we go through this master planning process. As I said, right now, we want all your feedback and we want your ideas, but as we go through and start to create our concept alternatives, we will start to think and work through as a team how some of these uses would impact that natural space, both positively and negatively.
Yeah, and Jessica, I don't know if it's worth just kind of mentioning, you know, just kind of the unique quality or the unique character of this park, kind of within its context to other Denver parks and to, you know, in relation to kind of other parks surrounding. As far as kind of the natural area goes, it's kind of a very unique feature. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think this is the largest regional park in Southwest Denver, and the closest park is probably Ruby Hill of the regional size. And then if you think about other regional parks throughout Denver, you think of Wash Park and City Park, and comparing Bear Creek Park to those more active manicured parks, it's very different. It has a much different feel. I think several people have mentioned the feeling that you're hiking when you're in the natural space south of the creek at this park. It's more like being in the foothills because there's kind of that elevation change. You're kind of climbing up hills instead of just being on a flat turf grass park. Or Wash Park and City Park both have lakes. This park has a stream instead of a lake. So that context makes it much more unique and tied to our native ecosystems.
Thanks, Jessica. And I guess, are we, how do we, or I guess, do we still want to have folks respond via the chat, or would we like to move on to kind of our next discussion or our real discussion question?
I think we can open it up at this point.
Great. So really, and this is a very open-ended question, but we just wanted to know, you know, is there anything you'd like to share, not only about your, you know, your desires or needs, but your experiences at Bear Creek Park, just kind of in general. So, Jessica, how do we want to manage this? Or are we kind of looking at raised hands here?
Raised hands would be great.
Yeah. So if you have some comments or would like to share, please use the raise hand feature, which is should be at the bottom of your window under
reactions.
Reactions. That's it. Yeah, I don't have it on my end. I couldn't remember.
And you'll have to raise your hand, and then I believe you're able to unmute yourself, but are there any comments here about your experiences at Bear Creek?
I see Don has his hand raised.
Hi, this is Don. I think that the people who live west of Sheridan are really close to the park, but I think that pedestrian access from that part is sort of difficult because you're walking behind the big box stores, well, the supermarket and Home Depot, and then under that kind of dark and sketchy bridge. And so even though people live close on that side of Sheridan, I don't think they're using it nearly as much as people who live east of Sheridan. And I think things that could be done to improve that would be helpful.
Great, thank you.
And if you don't feel like speaking up, you can definitely still chat, type in the chat bar.
Councilman Flynn actually had a question about access across the creek. Additional access, increased access, better access across the creek. Is that being considered as part of this effort?
Yeah, one of our priorities for this master plan is reducing conflicts along the main regional trail. Will and Gretchen had shown a slide with some graphics indicating conflict points and high trail usage around the playground picnic area. So that is something we are definitely studying, looking at where we could potentially relocate our pedestrian bridges across the stream to better improve flow of bike traffic and pedestrian traffic and reduce those conflicts at the playground, picnic areas, and active park uses. Councilman Flynn, would you like to speak now?
Yeah, I just wanted to address that. Thank you. Just briefly, the project to put another bridge to divert the regional trail through to the south side of the creek was proposed as part of the 2017 bond issue, but it did not make the cut. I believe that, and I know Cincere is here. I don't know if she can answer this, or Jesus. I believe it's been added to the CIP list, the capital improvement program list, so that it would be built at some point, so that the cyclists who are going at relatively higher speeds on the regional trail don't have to cross where the kids play at the playground and then might go back to the picnic shelter, etc. I know that that's been a hazard for as long as I've been there. So I'm really grateful that the department is considering that. Thank you.
And Mark Upshaw has his hand up. Go ahead, Mark. Do we need to unmute him?
All right, am I unmuted now?
You are.
Well, I'm actually gonna just build on what Councilman Flynn has said. I don't know what more I could really add, except, the bridge that's on the east side or the downstream side of the picnic area is very unsafe. I think everybody knows that. It meets no standards for cycling, and it's just too narrow and so on. But so something needs to be done with that for sure. And yet those crossings are delightful for viewing the creek. That particular location is I've taken some fabulous photographs, if I don't say so myself, from that bridge during the winter time. And I will share them with you if you want. You could use them however you want. But anyway, yeah, I think it would be good to really explore putting the bicycle path on the, I guess would be the south side of the creek, if it works, And I just want to say, I'm assuming that you're going to draw upon our bicycle experts in the city. There's a lot of ways to manage conflict. And I've seen it all over North America. So including causing bicyclists to actually dismount through a series of gates and so on. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in. I cycle through there frequently, and I have to slow down way, way below the 15 miles an hour. So anyway, that's my comment.
Thank you, Mark. Brett, your hand is raised. Can you unmute yourself? Or
yes.
There we go.
Am I good now?
Yes.
Okay. It wasn't popping up. I apologize. So as you've noticed, I've been in there quite a bit about disc golf. I just wanted to kind of real quickly introduce myself and tell you a little bit of background about disc golf, not only in Denver, but throughout Colorado and the United States and the world, if that would be okay. My name is Brett Marshall. I actually started a disc golf club back in the 1990s called Badco Disc Golf Club. We built a disc golf course in Paco Sanchez Park, which was one of the roughest parks in the state at the time. That park has now been there for almost 20 years. It has cleaned up a lot of the homeless and a lot of the problems in the park. However, we haven't had a lot of support from Denver Parks and Recreation keeping the park up and keeping the course up. The better we keep the course up, the more people we get in the park. The more people we get in the park, the more eyes you have on the park. The more eyes you have on the park, the less problems you have with bad actors in the park. Meaning homeless people, drug dealers, gang members, things of this nature. When you've got a bunch of people in the park utilizing it for something fun and great exercise, that's going to take a lot of pressure off of the park with the bad element. I've also watched and seen and organized 2 dozen, 3 dozen, 4 dozen disc golfers going out into local parks and picking up every single piece of trash in the park, cleaning it up. No offense to bicyclists, no offense at all, but I've never seen them do it. I've never seen skateboarders do it. I've never seen dog walkers do it. The only group I've ever seen do something like that is disc golfers. Don't believe me? I can provide you with Parks and Recreation people that will tell you about it and tell you how long we've done it and how often we've done it. We also help Parks and Recreation with things like building bridges, building trails, keeping trails clean. Disc golf is one of the best things there is in the world. It's great for seniors, it's great for juniors, it's great for just about anybody, females, everybody's, it's all inclusive at all times. It's free of charge. Nobody pays to go play disc golf. Nobody. I've dealt with youth organizations like the Police Athletic League, Boy Scouts of America, Girl Scouts of America. I'm doing a fundraiser for the Easter Seals Camp in Empire, Colorado, where I also built them a disc golf course, 27 holes on their private property in Empire, Colorado. We'll be doing that September 4th. We hope to raise a couple $1,000s during the tournament for them. These are the types of things that disc golf does. And if you don't put a disc golf course in there, that's a shame. Denver is way behind the curve on disc golf. Most cities the size of Denver have anywhere from 25 to 50 disc golf courses inside the city. We have one. That's all I wanted to say. I'm sorry. I'm a little passionate about it. I love it. I love the people that play disc golf. I know how great a care we take of our parks. And when it comes to wildlife, I've had a disc.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you. I'm going to cut you off to make sure everyone else has a chance to speak. We appreciate your feedback and passion.
We do appreciate that. You know, we've had a couple questions about underpasses, about the 285 underpass and the safety of using that space and whether that is going to be addressed. It doesn't feel inviting, are the comments that we're getting. I don't know if Jessica or Gretchen can address that access to the park.
Yes, we're certainly, I mean, we can definitely take that into account as we make the recommendations for the master plan. So those are all great things to know. Those spaces that you don't feel safe in, we can make recommendations for lighting, for opening up for better views. You know, are there things blocking views there? That kind of thing, because we do want to make it safe for women walking a stroller to get here. You know, it's really important that we make it accessible and welcoming for all ages, abilities, genders. You know, that's great to know. And if there are other points like that throughout the park, we'd like to know.
One one suggestion is cycling access on the south side of the park to give cyclists a safe and accessible trail on the south side as well. That also came from Don.
So with the bridge discussion I mentioned earlier, we will look at relocating relocating those pedestrian and cycling bridges and relocating part of the trail south of the creek. I don't know that we entirely are considering doing a bicycle only trail through this park, but that's something we could think of how that might impact the site.
And we also have our engineers on our team are looking at the structural quality of the bridge on the east side of the park. So we will have an analysis of that that will help frame our decision on what to do with that bridge.
Mark, did you raise your hand again?
Yes, I did.
Go ahead.
I think I don't know how to unmute myself.
You're unmuted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So talking about the recreational use, I think there's a potential opportunity here to use these trails to potentially circumambulate the entire park, where there might be, say, a mile loop or some designated distance so someone could come into the park and run or walk all the way around the park and choose to do a mile or 2 miles or whatever. It would be really a nice experience to go through a natural area and then come into the landscaped area as well. And I suppose the bridges could collaborate with that concept in some way. I will say, as was mentioned in the steering committee meeting, the roads that are on actually they're trails now, that are on the south side, the natural area, some of those are engineered roads leftover from the Fort Logan. And because they're engineered, they're constant grade. And so it's a nice way to work out if you want to run or walk at a certain pace and get a certain aerobic going. So that we might be able to build on that idea. There's also some great views because you gain a lot of elevation as you move south toward Kenyon. There's some great views as you look back and look to the north, so you can see the Loretta Heights Tower. And I think you can see part of the Red Rocks from there. So there's some really cool opportunities there to experience the landscape in a very complete and fun way, I guess. So anyway, another thought.
Thanks, Mark.
Brett, I'm assuming you just didn't put your hand down from your earlier comment.
Margie has her hand raised.
Oh, there you go.
I was just responding to a question, and I don't know how to take the hand down.
I can help you out with that.
Thank you.
So I actually had a question, and for you all, and I don't know if anyone has any insight into this, but it was something I noticed out on site, and that is that up here, kind of to the on the west side of Bear Creek Trail, when you go back under 285, and you kind of have that segment that someone mentioned earlier being kind of behind the more big box stores there. When I was riding over there, I noticed a series of kind of memorials that were up against some of the trees and along the edge. Can anybody speak to that, or does anybody know any kind of background? There wasn't any really, signage, but it looked like some, multiple folks had set up some memorials for people along that edge. Just curious if anybody knows.
Councilman Flynn.
Thank you. Will, I go by there frequently. I haven't stopped to look at them. My council office is in the shopping center. And as I go by there, I believe that they are more decorative than memorial. But I don't know if someone else here who bikes the trail has stopped and looked at them. One of the fellows here, I think bikes, put in the chat that he bikes the trail quite a bit. I'm wondering if he has any insight on that. Thanks.
I see Don responded saying he's seen the decorations, but not sure why they're there either. Maybe we'll, something we can figure out, dig into a little bit more.
Will and Jessica, I thought well, since I did get a couple of emails from members of the public who were not able to make the meeting. And interesting, both of the comments that they mentioned were about, again, the vegetation, and we touched on the vegetation, Jessica, on the south side of the park, or maybe it was Gretchen. They're concerned about the potential fire impacts, and maybe you want to address that.
Yeah, I can jump in and speak to that briefly. That is a very timely concern. We hear you. We know with the Marshall Fire up north that, you know, the idea of fuels and open spaces fueling fires, we know that is a concern. So as part of this master plan, we do have an ecologist on our team, as was mentioned earlier, and our ecology team will look at the condition of some of the trees, looking at trees that are dead or dying, and also look at the understory, the grasses and shrubs and that layer of landscaping to understand its health and quality and how those all could contribute to the potential for wildfire. And that's something we will address and attempt to manage as part of this master plan.
We do have a comment in the chat asking about the possibility of paved paths on the southern side and better lighting as people access the park from the Fort Logan side to get to the creek, especially on runs. And if that is a possibility.
That's a possibility, yes. I know there has been some discussion internally with Denver Parks and DOTI, or Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, about constructing a sidewalk along Kenyon. So that could be a possible outcome of the master plan. We could also look at converting some of the soft surface trails to concrete in certain areas where it makes sense. I know we've talked a little bit about the steepness of some of these areas and the trails and paths being like hiking. So there is a standard of steepness in which we don't like to use these soft surface trails because they do erode so much. A lot of these trails are in fairly poor condition because water just runs down them and washes the crusher fine surface away. So that's definitely a consideration of where the topography could dictate the surface material of some of these trails.
Jessica, we have another question in the chat with regards to park rangers. Can you speak to the possibility of park rangers walking the park frequently throughout the day and at night, and to their effectiveness?
So my understanding, our Southwest District Ranger team does patrol this park. I don't believe this area is a target for overnight patrol unless there is a call with concerns. We will talk to our park ranger team to understand how they currently patrol the park and how the master plan could impact their patrol and possibly help them do their job better. We talked a little bit about those visibility issues. So sometimes seeing sight lines through the park helps with that patrol and visibility. So that's definitely a concern we will explore throughout the master plan.
We've had two comments just dropped in the chat about gunshots in the park, and some growing concern from neighbors with regards to that safety issue.
I guess my response to that is when you hear those things and have those concerns, report it to Denver Police Department. I think that is outside of our park ranger scope of work. That should go to DPD.
Well, we've had some terrific questions and terrific comments. What's great about the Zoom platform is that all of these comments are captured. And if we've missed answering anything, we will certainly answer that in a frequently asked questions document. And of course, keep the questions coming throughout this process. We value the input, and it helps shape the planning document.
So Jessica, would you like to, I guess, would we like to kind of put a cap on our discussion and talk about next steps?
Yeah, I think this is a good point. It seems like the chat is slowing down. So I just want to reiterate again, make sure to put your comments in the chat. We will record this. I will personally go through and reread all the chat, and our design team will discuss all of your ideas and input from this meeting. The meeting's also being recorded and will be posted on our project website for anyone you would like to share this project with. We encourage you to send out that recording to them as well. So next steps, you already heard from Nora early in the program about our public outreach plan. So we have that schedule listed here again. Today, we will be launching our first community survey. So you'll have an opportunity to take a series of survey questions and provide additional input above and beyond what you've already provided today. So I think we will be able to put the link in the chat for that survey, as well as the link to our project website. Our next steering committee meeting will happen in early May. And then after that, we will continue to go through concept alternatives and start to refine how some of these ideas fit into the park before we move forward. So our next public meeting will likely be in kind of mid to late July or early August, depending on how we incorporate this feedback. And our survey will close on April 8th. So you have approximately 3 weeks to respond to that. So as this slide says, your feedback is incredibly valuable and will be a guiding force in this master planning process. So the survey link is here, and we will share that in the chat as well. So you can click on it and go directly to that survey. Please, please, please share it with all your friends, your neighbors, share it with your neighborhood organizations, your HOAs, anyone in the community you know who would love to provide feedback. Please share this with them. I'll link to our project page with more information. You can find the Bear Creek Park specific webpage under denvergov.org/park projects. And then of course you can contact me at any time over the course of the master plan process. My email address is on the slide. So thank you so much for joining us today on Zoom. We know your time is very valuable, so we are wrapping this up right on time. Thank you so much for being here. And the project team will be on for the next 10 minutes or so if anyone has additional questions and feedback.
Oh, Jessica? There's one very interesting question here. The proposal to increase the amount of water held upstream at Bear Creek Lake would affect the amount of water flowing through the park. Do you know anything about that, or is that something we need to find out more information about?
I just heard about that proposal very recently, maybe a week ago, and I don't have a lot of the details yet. I think that's something Sensoray and our team will be working on finding more information about how that could impact this project going forward.
Great.
Councilman Flynn.
Thank you. And when you look into that Bear Creek Lake proposal, I've been meeting virtually with some of the residents who have downstream residents who are concerned about the proposal to increase the storage significantly, but not to strengthen the dam itself. And so there was some concern about, are we thinking ahead about the possibility of failure along this watershed? So please check that out as well. There was also a question in the chat about where does E. coli, how does that get so high? There's a lot of contributing factors, and the transient population there is certainly a part of it, but a significant part of it also is the urban runoff and the runoff, particularly from the residential areas that have where there are a lot of dogs that might be using the backyards of the homes, and then you have the rain and the snow melt directly into the creek. So there's multiple contributors to the E. coli content, but it is rather high. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
All right, well, thank you all very much for coming and participating. It was really exciting to hear your ideas, and we'll be opening up a lot more opportunities for you to share more ideas for the master plan. So look forward to those.
Thank you all.
Everyone.
Have a good night.
Good
Bye.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you.
Tiffany just asked a question in the chat about what area are you thinking of for the dog park? So Councilman Flynn has recommended an area just north of Kenyon on the south side of the park that we will consider based on our dog park criteria. We don't have a specific dog park location in mind in terms of the master plan and Denver Parks perspective, so that is still completely up in the air.
All right, guys. Well, I guess I'll end the meeting.
Thanks again.
Okay, have a good night.
Thank you all. Thank you so much, team.
Yep, you too, Jessica. Bye.
Thanks, Jessica.
Bye.
Thanks, Nora.
Thanks. Bye-bye.